Good morning. This is Will Johnson. Thank you for joining Time to Connect.
Hey, Will Johnson, man, thank you so much for taking the time to connect.
Good morning, sir. It's good to see your face again.
It's good to see you. This is our second time doing this. You are a repeat customer, if you will, and I appreciate that. And I know you are a super busy guy right now, and I want to talk about all that. Kind of catch up with you. It's actually you have an amazing memory for dates and things. Take a stab at when we talked last with this format.
Oh my goodness. Would that have been, it was at least 2 years ago, two and a half, I think, right?
No?
It's gotten blurry.
Yeah. It was 19
Thanks
months
for-
ago. It's March 10th of 2022.
I was 22. Okay. I thought it was 21. See, the pandemic's done me in. It's blurred all my, it's just the combination of lockdown and then pandemic and then simple age and volume of buildup of events and everything has made things a little blurry over the last 3 or 4 years, I must admit.
I feel you, brother, and man, you've got a lot spinning up there in that noggin of yours. So let's see. We want to talk about the new record, Ordinary Crown, which I'm just loving. Beautiful record.
Thank you.
And obviously we want to talk about your recent touring with Jason Isbell's band and shows. You're doing a lot of shows. I know you've done in the 19 months since we've had one of these episodes. I know you've done solo shows. Have you? Were there any Centro shows in that last 19
There
months?
were, yeah, we did a run of four reunion shows in Denton in June of 22.
Hmm.
So we made a point to play it in the dead of the heat and the dead of the summer, but it was a blast. It was so fun to kind of dust everything off. And I think we drew from a well of 47, 48 songs for those four shows. So we tried to mix it up pretty well. And it was joyous. I mean, it was very easy to get all that stuff up and running again and easy to make a racket with them. Not surprisingly, but
Hmm.
just made it it's a fun weekend, fun thing to get to make noise with those guys again.
Yeah, like a family reunion almost, huh?
Very much so, very much so. My face was sore from all the smiling for about 2 or 3 days afterwards, so I figured
Yeah,
that's a good sign.
beautiful. And I know you've made a lot of new paintings in that time, and you've had at least one exhibition. Did you have something recently at Yard Dog? Is that right?
I had one at Yard Dog a little over a year ago, and then one is up right now at the Long Time, which is a sandlot baseball facility east of Austin. It's kind
Mm.
of heaven on earth, man. It's really like true field of dreams kind of situation out there. So I had maybe 12, 13 pieces in a group show out there that opened 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it's up for another week or so.
Yeah, unfortunately, let's see, this thing's going to go live in about a week, so it will have just ended by then,
Yeah,
unfortunately. But cool. Well, I also want to talk a little bit about your songwriting. And I've got some. We've talked about that before, but I have some maybe more specific questions.
sure.
Let's start with the Jason Isbell tour. Talk about, if you will, how that came about and what that incredible journey's been like so far.
Well, it's kind of funny. Jesse and my wife Jesse and I were on the way to Pittsburgh late last January to see her father, who hasn't been in the best of health. So we went up to pay a visit to him, and we had a few flights on the way up, some connections, and in the process of these connections, or while we were on layovers or once we got to Pittsburgh, Jason and I were just texting as usual. I mean, we keep pretty close tabs on each other, and we're always sending each other weird jokes or talking about God knows what, just life stuff. And we had been texting on and off for, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours. And we had an early day the next day to go see her father, and I was kind of having to shut things down and get to bed. And Jason was like, "By the way, can I hire you?" And I was like, "Well, that's pretty ominous question." I mean, at first I thought it might be for poster art or, something like that, or maybe backing vocals again or something along those lines. And I said, "Sure, what's going on?" And he said, I would really like to add a second drummer slash, guitar player, vocalist to the 400 unit for all the upcoming touring. Would you be interested in doing that? And of course, I said, well, yeah, I mean, the want is there. I need to make sure the can is there.
Hmm.
And so this was a Saturday night. I said, can you give me until like Monday night, Tuesday morning? Give me about 72 hours to try to get my world in order. And can we talk Tuesday? And it's like, absolutely, take all the time you need. And so I talked it over, of course, with Jesse first and foremost, and then Keeled Scales, my record label. And so we spoke that a couple days later, and I expressed I had a really busy spring lined up with some solo touring and everything, and I think tickets were already on sale for an April solo tour, and so I essentially said, yes, I would absolutely love to do it. I have a lot of things going on for the next 3.5 months, but as of roughly June 1st or so, like I'm good to go. And so he said, absolutely, we'll wait till then. It turned out Matt Pence was available to fill the spot throughout the springtime,
Hmm.
which was a big relief and which helped a lot. And then once he was wrapped up with his time doing that mid-May, there was a couple week break, and then I flew up to Nashville and we rehearsed for a couple days, and that was that. And really, with the exception of about a month's time, we've been on the road since June 7th, basically.
Mm.
Um, and it's been joyous. I mean, unsurprisingly so. My concerns initially, I basically told Jason or asked Jason, I said, I would love to do this. I would love to be a part of this, but I really want to know that everybody in the band is 100% comfortable with a new person coming in because they've all been together as that lineup for a long, long time. They got a lot of miles and a lot of experience racked up, and I wanted to ensure that everybody was okay with me stepping in. And he assured me that that discussion had already taken place and that there was nothing to worry about. But, it's one of my favorite bands. I don't want to step in and muck it up. And as I jokingly said to him, I feel like I'm strolling into the Louvre with a can of spray paint, man. I got to be careful. I got to I got to find my way to respectfully and rightfully step into this pristine piece of musical framework that
Yeah.
I adore and respect. I mean, we all have years of friendship racked up. And of course, Jason and I have a lot of time racked up either touring together or playing together or recording together. So that part wasn't hard, but still, it's a sacred space to be in. So I wanted to make sure everybody was happy and comfortable with the idea. And it's been a really joyous ride over the last few months. I think everything's running on extremely positive, really good cylinders right now.
Mm. I'm I'm bummed that I haven't seen one of the shows yet. I definitely will. Is this as far as you know, going to continue indefinitely, or do you have any specific ideas about that?
We haven't had a formal conversation about it, although, for several months now, he's essentially been announcing, this is the newest member of our rock and roll band.
Hmm.
And so I hope so. I don't take anything for granted, but at the same time, it sure is a joyous musical thing to get to travel along with them and help make the noise. And it's a total honor. I mean, uh, I've always tried to serve the song as best I can, no matter what project it might be. Um, and it feels really good right now. I'm starting to receive, dates going well into 2024 at this point. So it's my hope that it keeps going on. But again, I don't take a thing for granted.
Right on. And have you had the opportunity at any of the shows to do any of your songs?
Yeah, very recently, as a matter of fact, we just finished up an 8 night stand at the Ryman in Nashville, and we played a song of mine called "Just to Know What You've Been Dreaming." We played that three of those nights actually,
I think
and
actually I've seen a YouTube of that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's extremely generous. I mean, Jason is an extremely generous, sweet soul, and it means a lot for him to want to play that song. And of course, I don't think I could ask for a better backing band to play that with. So we worked it out in the sound check a couple of Sundays ago and added it into the set for uh, three of the shows, which was a lot of fun.
And it's so cool. Two of my favorites collaborating together. Can't wait to see those shows. Has there been any surprises? Anything that, I mean, you've been around, you've known him for a long time, and I would think it has played out so far pretty much as you expected, but has there been any moments where you went, oh, okay, I didn't quite expect it to be like this?
Well, we there's a reason I think we gravitated toward each other as friends and as mutual fans, and that we have long spoken a real similar musical language.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that he's an infinitely more gifted guitar player than I'll ever be, but I've learned a lot through him,
Mhm.
just with regard to how to watch your fellow players and respond to them.
Mm.
And that started in the Centromatic days when we would throw songs at him that he had never played in his life before, at least to my knowledge. And on stage in the moment, he would watch our hands and kind of work out what he was doing.
Mhm.
He's an amazing listener, an amazing, and he responds in an amazing way to whatever you might do in the first dance step. I'm using air guitar here to show you, but I learned a lot through that over the decades of playing with him. And so I tried to honor the 400 unit in the same way. I watch everybody's hands and try to find my inroads or find my little pathways to speak musically. And I think little by little I've gotten better at it. So there, most of the songs have been extremely uh, natural. I'll even say easy to learn because I've listened to them for so much of my life.
Yeah.
Um, there were some surprises within the rhyme and run because naturally, any songwriter would want to change the shows up some just to keep things a little different night to night.
Hmm.
And so around 2 or 3 each afternoon, or most afternoons of this rhyme and run, we'd get a text from him with maybe 2 or 3 old songs that we had never played.
Hmm.
And so if there was any surprise, it was just like, well, by 3 or 4, I'm sitting in the hotel room trying to make notes and, last minute notes on how to play a song that I've loved for a long time but never played live.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but those are not bad surprises in the least. It was really nice to dust off songs like Yvette or Streetlights or some deeper cuts that just don't get played that often. And
Yeah.
again, I think that naturally and inevitably keeps us all on our toes in a way, and that keeps us learning. And if it keeps us learning, well, then I think that inevitably um, makes us better musicians. And so I like that kind of energy. I need something new to get nervous about almost all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Oh, I feel you there. I cover a couple of his songs in my shows, and one experience I've had with his songs that is not that uncommon is when I've learned them and realized just structurally they were simpler than I thought because they sound so full and so interesting the way the production's done, and then you break it down into the just a basic chord structure, like, oh wow, that's
I,
not that complex actually.
no, but collectively, their choices are so strong,
Yeah.
and their choices of layering and um, individually speaking as musicians are so strong that it makes you forget that, man, this is just G to C to D back
Right.
to A
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's so much information and engaging information happening over the course of a simple chord structure that you tend to forget.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right on. Well, speaking of Jason, have you been to see Killers of the Flower Moon?
Not yet. We have a date. Jesse and I have date night on Sunday, so we're gonna go see it.
It's pretty amazing, man. It's pretty
Can't
amazing.
wait.
And I suspect, I don't know if he's talked about it much to you, but I suspect it was pretty damn cool working with Marty and Leo and those guys. That had to be a real thrill for Jason.
Oh, I think so. I mean, just the stories that I've gotten and some of the, you know, It's just some of the little tidbits I've heard about that experience sound amazing. It's fun just to hear him talk about, Marty and Leo and Bob and
Yeah, and
like,
Bob. Yeah,
like they're just
yeah,
friends,
yeah.
like friends back at the coffee shop or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah. And you've done a little bit of acting yourself. I wouldn't be shocked to see something like this happen to you. Have you thought about that?
Not in depth, no. But I would be open to it, of
Yeah,
course, if something came up.
yeah,
I really enjoyed the minimal experiences that I had doing that. Again, it kind of goes back to like, giving me something new to keep me on my toes and get nervous about. It's walking a tightrope in a way, but at the same time, I really enjoyed those experiences, so I would definitely be open to something like that again.
yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. Well, let's talk a little bit about the new record, Ordinary Crown. And man, what a great record. There's something about. I would hate to be a music critic and have to write about music all the time. I think I've quoted that Thelonious Monk quote to you, and you probably knew it before, that writing about music is like dancing about architecture.
Yeah, yeah.
Ends up being so reductive, and it ends up being. I think this is why, when like you, I was an English major and undergraduate, I've always loved literature and been a reader, but especially kind of that new critical approach of, I'm going to explicate this poem and tell you what it's about. I've always
Mhm,
resisted that. I've always been kind of drawn to people like you, who you kind of frustrate easy interpretation with your lyrics. Um, but where was I going with that? Gosh, oh, thinking about your sound and your lyrics, and I just have a quick chat if you don't mind. It's a little bit
mm.
self-serving. I think you know why, because I am trying to write about you a little bit. But with respect to your sound, I don't know how to describe it. I will say that I'm not objective about this, because I've been following you for so long, and loving what you do for so long. But I would contend that whether we're talking about that Jetpack cassette or we're talking about Ordinary Crown, it always sounds like you. There's a Will Johnson sound to me. Um,
I mean, it's hard for me to expand on that in too much detail, but I can say that that most days that I pick up a guitar or sit at the piano or wherever I may start the germination of a song or even just a piece of music, I am trying to lock in on at least a mood that is compelling or at least a feeling that's compelling. And if that is the foyer, if that's the entryway for me, with regard to inspiration or just stimulation, well, then I'll keep following that foyer.
mhm,
And it can be vague and it can be abstract. And I think, the word has been used, angular or whatever you want to say, painterly with lyrics, but at the same time, it's up for interpretation. And so long as it presents a mood that I feel is satisfactory
mhm,
as a writer and as a listener, well, then I'll keep pursuing it and then inevitably releasing it.
mhm.
Um, I'm infinitely more interested in what it might mean to someone else than what it means to me,
Sure.
because most of the time that's more interesting. So
Yeah.
sometimes at the merch booth, even in the Centromatic days, I would occasionally be asked, "What is fill in the blank song about?"
Mhm.
Um, and I would stumble a little bit at the beginning, and I eventually just kind of went on to, well, what does it mean to you? What do you think it's about? Because a lot of the time the listener's interpretation was way more engaging than my own personal one. And furthermore, I didn't want to tarnish their interpretation
Yeah.
by just barging through the door with what I think I meant by it.
Yeah.
So yeah, there is a little mystery in it, but I prefer mystery, frankly.
You bet.
I'm down with a story song every once in a while, and I think I'm getting better at writing story songs. I think I'm getting a little more comfortable in my own skin to present a piece of music that way.
Mhm.
But I still like the odd
Sure.
lines that just fit together like puzzle pieces that were meant to go together.
Yeah, maybe a good example of that is, on the new record, is of Passengers in Plight.
Mhm.
I mean, you clearly are, you're using words that refer to something. There's a clear, I mean, you reference your mother and the
Mhm.
dream, and things that even though they're evocative, and I'm not going to interpret them exactly like you are, it's not as challenging
No,
as a line like "We're calling Thermatico because he may have options within the sequence to which we abide under the railway."
right.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
different one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and Passengers in Flight was almost like a personal challenge. Like, let's see if I could get, Christmas, my mother, Freddie Mercury, and Danny Torrance from The Shining into one song. And
And
so
you
I sat
did.
at my desk like, let's see how we can work
Yeah.
this out.
Yeah. Well, you
So
did, and it's a beautiful song. In Granada, is are again, I don't want to be too reductive and say, what is that about? What does it mean?
yeah,
But these are words that do have a referent to the world.
sure.
And is that referring to Spain, or is it referring to the Granada Theater in Dallas?
No, it's referring
Or
to
neither?
Spain. It's
Okay.
kind of it's a reference to some of the American boisterousness or gluttony, or just some of the American ugliness that I sometimes see abroad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the line was like, in Granada, I was back on the rule. I was a high fashion wretch, arm in arm with a blissed out fool. And I think sometimes us Westerners don't quite have a grasp on how loudly we can stand out when we're abroad. And so it was inspired by regular touring over there,
Mhm.
and trying to create a backdrop with Granada, but also sort of the occasional American ugliness that we just see abroad.
Well, and you included yourself there, which is,
Totally. I
yeah,
mean, yeah.
which is
I
really
indict myself with my terrible Spanish trying to speak at a, train station window with a line of 17 people behind me,
yeah,
just giving it a shot. And I'm
yeah,
sure I must come across as an idiot, but at the same time, I at least want to show that I'm trying.
right, right. And then you flip over to feeling like Freddie Mercury at Wembley, and and that's kind of the flip side of that, that feeling of gratitude, of right, of you just feel the shower of appreciation and love sometimes and have to just bathe in it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And so the record explores some different means of self-identification, and yeah, just how you might assess yourself, or how you might live in the moment. And
Yeah.
sometimes that deals with wild insecurity and shakiness, and other times it deals with the feeling of absolute gratification and privilege.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things I've noticed about you, Will, and I really admire, is that it's not just songwriting. You use language very creatively, just in conversation. You know, things like you comparing playing with Jason's band to walking into the lube with a can of spray paint. And you mentioned to me earlier in a text that you had dropped your kids off at their outpost. I assume you mean school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and talking about the Centro shows, you drew from a well of 48 songs. You have a way with language, period, and it doesn't necessarily be just with respect to songwriting. And I know that's probably unconscious at this point. Has it been that way your whole life? Is that something that is just comes from a sheer lifetime of reading so much, of loving language, and loving to be a creative person in general?
I think so, but I think it maybe became more prominent. I mean, I wrote a lot when I was a teenager, and in my early 20s, I filled journals and tour diaries voraciously. I mean, I was very protective of my writing time on my first tours that I did with Funland as a drummer. And of course, I wasn't really writing songs yet by that time, but I was at least filling notebooks, just trying to develop a detailed eye on the world around me.
Mhm.
And that led to writing songs. And then, once I was writing songs, and even, finished with a degree from college, I sort of felt like I owed it to the work that I put in academically. And then suddenly, professionally as a songwriter, I just felt like uh, it it inevitably becomes a more natural thing the more the writing piled up, and the more years of experience piled up. um, I I realized that I just had the power of language at hand,
Mhm.
and it's free, and you
Mhm.
can, you know, and it's powerful. And
Eh,
so why not work at it like I mean, it's a muscle memory kind of thing a lot of the time, but at the same time, I feel like inevitably the more I wrote songs, maybe the more prominent that became over the course of just having conversations.
mhm.
Like try to use specifics and use your eye for detail. I mean, I think your listener deserves that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's part of the charm of Will Johnson, that you do these things with absolute sincerity and no, there's no seeming self-consciousness. It's kind of like your paintings. I've said this before. If I tried to do those paintings in the style that you do them, I just feel like I don't know, I couldn't pull it off. But you have an authenticity about you that makes these things work so well.
I
And
try not to. I mean, I have conversations with Sadler about this regularly, but we are, musically in the band, we are living a wild life of wonder and privilege and joy.
yeah,
And but at the same time, that comes with a healthy dose of vulnerability, or at least willing to be vulnerable.
yeah.
And one story that we've shared recently, I mean, this happened 3 or 4 years ago, but um, I I had drummed with Strand of Oaks on the Colbert Show, which was an exhilarating, beautiful experience. That Jason and Amanda were part of the band, had Tom and Bo from My Morning Jacket, of course Tim from Strand of Oaks, and we had this beautiful 48 hours in New York City, kind of living the dream.
Hmm.
And then I got home from the airport in Austin, and it was trash day, and like this is literally like 36 hours after having been on Colbert and kind of lived the dream, so to speak. The trash can had tumped over in the gutter, and there were, dirty diapers, probably 3 or 4 dirty diapers that were in the gutter, and traffic streaming up and down Woodrow Street in North Austin. And I'm picking up, shit filled diapers out of a gutter after after having done this other thing, and it's just life. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just life. And it happened a couple of weeks ago after the Jimmy Kimmel show. It's like I'm working on the mower and I can't get it to start, and you're just the next day you're just another Hayes County dude trying to get his mower to cooperate. But I think that it is definitely a matter of trying not to get too high or too low, or just feel the bumps in the road and stay with it.
Yeah, yeah.
um
Yeah, again, I think that's part of your charm. Man, I'm going to let you go here. I know it's a well-deserved day off for you, and I really appreciate you taking this time. I do want to ask you about one old song of yours, and just I won't. Again, we don't have to explicate it. Numbers 1 and 3,
mhm.
such a compelling song, man. But I've troubled over. Again, I'll ask it this way. What is that referring to? Is that just referring to bad luck? Like the number 13 or
I think so, subconsciously. I mean, it's hard to put my pea brain back into 1996 when I wrote it, I
yeah,
guess. I
yeah,
wrote part of it at a Denny's on the north side of Denton, and then came home and wrote the rest of it.
yeah,
And it was a classic situation of where a line or two comes to you at the most inconvenient time, and then you just race home and try to document and capture the feeling and not lose the song and not lose the feeling or the melody. And so, yes, I think it was a reference. I mean, by and large, it's a reference to bad luck and a parting, a breakup.
yeah, yeah. I'm selling your TV, etc. Well, man, thank you so much again. You're just a fascinating creature and a wonderful man, and I'm very privileged to know you. And I appreciate you taking the time to be here on the podcast. And keep up the amazing work.
Man, I'll try. It's always great to hang with you, and I appreciate you having me on. Thank you, John.
You bet, man. Take care.
See you later,
Bye.
man. All right.